All right, guys. On this one, we're gonna be talking about
Whoa, hold up.
what?
Podcast number 6.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, come on now. What are we
Can
doing?
give a little introduction.
I'm going straight into what we're talking about. We talk about which podcast
Hey,
this
when I
is.
listen
You know
to a
what I'm saying?
pod, I like when people just
Get straight into it.
get
Hey,
into it.
that might have
Yeah.
been my bad then.
Takes
Go
a little
ahead.
too long.
Yeah.
I'll just mess with you. But today we're gonna be talking about. I feel like we've talked a lot about a lot of fun things. We've talked about races. We've talked about victory quite a bit. So this time we're going to talk about navigating injuries, setbacks, and then tracking progress. And if you are into training, or you can probably apply this to anything in life, really, on how to kind of look at those things, how to avoid letting them happen more often, but a lot of times we can't avoid them. So how you're going to deal with them in your day-to-day life. And me and you are going to give some stories that we've experienced here recently and how we've navigated them ourselves.
Yeah. You can go ahead and start it off with what you've been dealing with and where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I started training for High Rocks Dallas. Dude, I committed to that race, I want to say like 4 or 5 months into last year. And that was around the time when High Rocks was starting to become a little bit more popular, but it wasn't, I really wouldn't say it was like huge yet, if that makes sense. But anyway, I got into it, and I remember I started training about 140 days out from the event. And it was almost like, I don't want to say you couldn't do anything wrong, but it was like I was getting better every single week, like pretty quickly. Like it started out and I sucked at some of the circuits and whatnot, but I was getting better every single week on a consistent basis. So I think I just got used to the feeling of progression and kind of just things going my way, if that makes sense. And then we went and did the event, obviously, and we didn't do as good as we wanted, but we were still extremely happy with our first performance, getting a 106 in men's pro. But after that, coming off of the event, I started training like normal, went into about a month worth of training, and I started to have a lot of pain in my Achilles and my right foot. And I remember a run very vividly. I had a 5K time trial on there, and I've never done that before. It was more for me and Billy to get a kind of like a reference for where my speeds were currently at. I hadn't done a 5K time trial, and I made the mistake of doing the 5K time trial on a back road where the roads are kind of, you know how they're kind of like
Slanted.
slanted, like
where like water has to drain off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just pushing it, and there were a lot of hills, and I noticed something weird in my foot, but it was one of those things I was going for a time, so I pushed it. And my Achilles felt a little bit weird the next day, but I kept running through it. And it's like with running, you get weird pains all the time. So it was just like, I can get through that. It doesn't really matter. And then I had a 8-mile run one day. It was a normal morning, and it felt like complete ass. I was running like a 9:30 pace, which was really slow for me. And the pain got worse and worse and worse. And if you've ran before or just been into fitness for a long time, or like even in life, it's almost like if you ignore something and it continues to be there, eventually it just kind of creeps up on you, and it crept up on me. And I remember stopping my run that day and walking back to the apartment, just because that was the first time I had felt pain that I was like, okay, this is actually not good. Yeah, this ain't good. And from there, I had ran, dude, pretty much every single day for a year. Like regardless, like you could listen to that and be like, you can't run, but big deal. You know what I mean? There's other important. At that point in my life, that was the one time in the morning that allowed me time to
think,
to free. Yeah. Before we go to run the business, before we go to attack anything that really comes at you that day, professionally or personally, you had the hour or 2 hours in the beginning of the day where you get to kind of get away from everything. It's quiet. You hear the birds, the sun comes up in the morning, and then that gets kind of stripped from you, and you can't do that. And I had to learn kind of how to start training without being able to run. Like, how do I keep my conditioning? And for me, that put me in a really weird spot mentally, truthfully. Like, it just becomes such a part of your routine. Um, and then you have these big goals. We had already had the Austin Marathon lined up earlier for this year, and we had the obviously the Miami High Rocks next and the NYC High Rocks next. So it's not that you even feel like you're letting yourself down. Whenever you're doing these events with people, you feel like you're letting a lot of people down, especially even if you post a lot of, let's like say, content or like helpful things in general around what you do. You do feel like you're letting more than just yourself down. It's almost like and it can get in your head, and we're going to talk a little bit more on that as we go, but I'll let you share your experience with like what you've kind of been going through mentally.
Yeah. My story, I mean, not as like not as bad where like I've been taken out of training and I've had to drop out of like a race specifically, but just after races, which after my first race I noticed a lot. Obviously I had like physical like damage to like my feet, like different stuff like that, like blisters, things that kept me from running for a week and a half, 2 weeks. But even after the first time I had ran and dealt with like the blisters on my foot, and whenever they went away, I still dealt with like my heart rate like drastically like going up whenever I did get back into training. So this time, for instance, I finished the Rocky Raccoon, and it had been a week and a half. This last Wednesday, whenever we ran together, was the first time back running, and like physically, like it hurt a little bit to run the first 5 miles, but like endurance wise, it just seems like my endurance like took a toll. Like I can almost like feel it when I run.
So you essentially go from like you can run 85 miles or you can run a 20-mile training run on the weekend, like it's really no issue, to wow, like now when I try to run 6 miles,
yeah, it's hard.
I can't get my heart rate under 170.
Yeah. Well, it's like the same pace that I was running for my zone 2, which a 9-minute pace would have been like a 145 heart rate for me personally, was today at a 915, which I mean, I guess like keep in mind like it's like wet out there and you're running through puddles and it's like snowing and it's cold, but my heart rate was average 165, max 185. Yeah. So it's much different from the start. And like, I do notice my HRV on my watch is still bottomed out and my resting heart rate is still higher than it usually is. So just coming back, it's a lot harder, even 2 weeks afterwards. Like your endurance just isn't the same because your body's still recovering. But
so for you, with your experience, because I think a lot of people would get a decent amount out of this, but I do want to read this off. It's called the Nova Effect, and I heard about it, and I want to say it was Chris Williamson's most recent podcast.
Yeah, I was wondering whenever you had texted and told me to look it up, like where that was from.
Yeah,
but
Chris talks about the Nova Effect in there, and I wanted to include it in ours because I feel like a lot of people, especially if you're if you're working towards something in business or if you're working towards something in fitness, I think this is really natural for a lot of people, especially if you're just getting started or if you've experienced a little bit of success and you're coming off of that, which is your situation. But this gives like the rundown on the Nova Effect. So the Nova Effect refers to a concept where initial success or good luck can lead to overconfidence, causing poor decision-making and ultimately failure. Much like a star, going nova appears bright and explosive, but then it fades away, potentially leaving behind damaging consequences. Essentially, it's the idea that sudden positive events can blind individuals to potential risks and lead them to make reckless choices based on their perceived invincibility. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of plays into, and I don't want to say it's a perceived invincibility, but it's like for you, let's say it's even someone who's
it was after the first race.
Yeah, it's like with anything, you have like if you start something new and you go through this period of like learning almost where you don't know much, but you don't know much.
Mm-hmm.
So you're learning, but then you start to learn and you have like your first like small win, you're learning things. It's starting to make more sense. And then for you have your first 100-mile race, you complete it, you crush it. It's like this feeling of, oh, I had only ran a half marathon before and I just did a 100-mile race. Like I can't.
I mean, that's kind of, yeah, that is how it goes. Before the first race, it was like half marathon, trained for 3.5 months, run my first 100-mile race, which it wasn't like fast by any means, but I finished 100 miles. So when I got done, like for me, whenever I signed up for Rocky Raccoon, I was like, I've already done 100 miles. Like I can finish 100 miles. I know I can. Like now I'm just going to try to finish it faster than the first time. And I had a coach for the first race. I didn't hire a coach for the second race because I was just banking on using the Runna app to program my runs for me, and I would just go out and run those and be fine. I'd run a sub 24, and leading up to the race 2 months out, it didn't work that way. I hired a coach because I realized I was a little bit behind, so I made those wrong decisions leading up to the race, and I don't think I had enough time with my coach before the race to really get to where I wanted to be. I did still have the confidence because I had already finished a 100-mile race. And I think that thought that like I had already finished a 100-mile race and it was just going to be like easy at that point affected me in the second one.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't, and maybe you could tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think that you thought it was going to be easy. I think it's almost...
Yeah, not easy.
I for somehow, whenever you do have a little bit of success in something, you tend to forget how new you still are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, do you think the same applies to like your training? I was gonna say because you, which you worked a lot more on like speed because you were training for the marathons and like high rocks, but like I remember like me and. Like, I think Billy said it to you too, like in your training, like how much faster you had gotten from when you first started running to like where you were at.
Yeah.
Because me and you both started out at like the same pace. It was like a 10-30 minute pace whenever we first started. And then you ended up getting to like a, some runs at like a 7:45 in a zone 2 like workout.
Yeah, but that was the issue. It was like, if I would have been able to zoom out a little bit more, I would have realized how much progress I was making. It's almost like you get addicted to the progress and you think it's never ending.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I just ran a 7. Let's say if I just held a 6:45 pace on a speed run or a tempo run for the first time ever, like I'm going to push the issue. And now when I do this 5K, I'm going to try to do a 6:25. And it's like naturally, like if you're competitive, someone may say that that's a good thing, but it's like, all of that has a timestamp on it, dude. That only lasts so long. Eventually, you're gonna meet your maker operating like that.
I mean, if everyone was always progressing, like no one, you know.
Yeah, it wouldn't make the game as interesting as it is. But now that we kind of have an idea of like what we both have went through, I do want to read this quote from Patrick Bet-David because I thought it was super insightful. It says, "Success is not just about making the right moves; it's about eliminating the wrong ones." And for me, I don't think that could be any more true. Like, truthfully, because if I were to relate that to the training, for me, it was like the better I got, it was like how much more can I add on? Do you know what I mean? It was more how much
how many more like miles could I get in?
How many,
was it like something like that?
How much weekly mileage could I get to? How fast could I push these paces? Like what could I run this 5K? And while that's cool and it's fine, you have to be able to zoom out quite often. And we'll get into this later in the pod about how to track progress, but I think zooming out is so important. That's why I block off a day at the end of every week now to look at my week of training and think about like what went well, what didn't. And if it did go well, I'm just stacking one brick on top of that. I'm not stacking fucking 7
right
all at once.
Yeah. even with like the strength sessions and everything too.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a lot of volume.
Yeah.
I remember telling you like, you're running like just as many miles as me, like training for like high rocks and still doing strength training.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I should be adding more to what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
it did seem crazy to me.
I think that leads into like the more isn't always better. Sometimes less is more
Mm-hmm.
if it's more intentional work. But I do kind of want to hop into lessons learned from that. And for me specifically, it was I think when you sit back and you see like everyone competing and running and working out, and this is also where I think social media can be a bad thing if you use it not as a tool.
Yeah.
While you're not able to train and you see other people having,
If you use it like a consumer.
yeah, because you see other people performing and you're like, fuck, man, like I want to get back to that so bad. And it's the same for business, whatever it may be. It's like, but I think that everyone is just in different phases. So when we say zoom out, this is what I mean. For me, the importance of zooming out and understanding the bigger picture was huge for me. So it was the role of purpose and vision in your training. And I'm going to insert another quote here, but I like this one a lot from Alex Hormozy. So Alex says, success comes down to doing the obvious thing for an extraordinary period of time without convincing yourself that you're smarter than you are. And damn, brother, did I convince myself that I was way smarter than I was. And
Me too.
I want to say a lot of people do that and it's natural, but
Yeah. It has to be. I mean, you also wouldn't get better too if you didn't make the wrong decisions along the way. So,
wow. Yeah, that's true. I think
that's the same thing in like everything.
Yeah. I think what it forced me to do was when you get injured and you can't perform like you were, or let's say in business when you have a setback, or let's say your store isn't as profitable as you maybe wanted it to be. It sucks in the moment, but it does make you kind of take a step back and go like, okay, what led me to this point?
Mm-hmm.
What got me to the point where my store wasn't as profitable as I would have liked it to be? What got me to the point where I got injured and I wasn't able to perform at the point that I want to be able to perform at usually. So if you can kind of zoom back out and understand that sometimes, and I know this is cliche to say, but like the injuries can be a blessing. It can, because it made me realize where I wasn't focusing enough maybe on my relationship and spending more time on that. And it may not even be more time. It may be more like actual intentional time of like, yeah, I may be injured, but at least I have someone that loves and cares about me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I can be thankful for in my life.
Right.
Whereas before, if like everything is working your way, you may overlook that piece of it.
We're just kind of like, you think of it as like a oh, pity me situation, kind of like that. Like you're saying, like if you get injured, then you like look at it in a bad way, but like in those times you can look at like the good side of things.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that honestly, I think it just makes the story that much better. Truthfully,
Mm-hmm.
I think when you cross the finish line or whenever you do get to where you want to go, I think it makes it that much better. And I know that some people legitimately struggle. I've had some conversations with people over the past, I would say like 7 to 14, like the last 2 weeks, with people who have legitimately struggled hard at a point in their life. And dude, I've been in one of those spots one time, and like I think that sometimes people can convince themselves that there like isn't a way out, or that things
Don't get better.
don't.
Like there's
Yeah,
no light.
yeah, and I know for a fact it's just what you feed your brain, dude. And if you wake up and you think that immediately, it's just a cycle, bro. And all you do is you have to break the cycle. And for me, whenever I got injured, breaking the cycle was, what can I be thankful for and how can I pivot? I bought a bike immediately and I started honestly really appreciate, this is going to sound very lame, but really appreciating just having dinner at night with Briley.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, wow, dude, I have someone who loves and cares about me and can't wait to see me when I get back.
No, I think that's cool.
How fucking cool is that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you can have that kind of gratitude at a point where you don't feel as good,
Yeah.
I think that does make the world of a difference. So, like, if you transition that into fitness, if you are dealing with a setback, an injury, if you can somehow transition that into a little bit of gratitude, it does help me a lot. And I'm not trying to sit here and make it seem like rainbows and sunshine. Like that's going to take away from how it feels, because sometimes it still feels super shitty.
I think it's also cool too. I mean, you relate it back to what we talked about on a different podcast. Like, it's all about adapting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't use that time as, say, like you're in like one mindset, like, oh, I can't do anything else. Like, this sucks. Like, I'm hurt. Like, I can't run. Like what do I do now? Like, it's just, you adapted. Like, you got a bike. Now you're cycling. Like, you still keeping your endurance from running. Like, maybe you're not getting, like, the pounding of, like, your feet. So, like, the running's not the same when you come back, but you still have the endurance.
Yeah.
And you're getting something else out of it. Like, you're seeing the good in things. So, I mean, it's just adapting.
And it's it's the same for you. It's the same for you of like, you're adapting now, and your next week of training is going to be a lot less impact. It's going to be super easy, so you can let your HRV recover. But that's also learning for you that maybe next time you do a 100-mile race, instead of going to running, the week after you you have a bike eventually, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go on 3 super leisurely bikes in the week after my race to make sure I'm still getting some form of endurance in. I'm just not running.
Right.
Or maybe I go on 2 runs and it's 3 bikes. It's just, the more you learn to adapt, the better. But that does lead me into the main thing that I did want to talk about, that I think can give tactical advice to people to help them improve on. And this is just helped me a ton. So I do want to share that tool with other people.
Absolutely.
This quote is from Nick Bear, actually, but he said, small wins, when tracked and celebrated, lead to big victories. And I believe that's a paraphrase, so I think it's just a little bit along those lines. But cliche again, but small wins, when tracked and celebrated, lead to big victories. So if you can track your small wins, I promise you it makes you much more intentional, and also it makes the end result that much sweeter. And the reason I say that, before my training, it worked really well with how we had it structured, but I would always want more. So it was always like more miles, more this, but with really no vision in mind or understanding why. Mm-hmm. So what I've started doing is I downloaded an app called Training Peaks, and I bought it's like the premier version, and you can buy plans on Training Peaks for people who want to get into running or
it looks sick too.
Whatever, yeah. And buy the premium package, and if you do that, you can go in and upload your training to your watch. So every single day, you just wake up, you press your run, and it's already programmed for you, good to go. The cool part about it, though, is it automatically updates your threshold paces. So as you get faster, the plan will get faster as well, and it's not just static. Super cool. But what I'm saying is I also program my strength in there, and I program my high rock sessions in there as well. So I track my times on my high rock sessions. I track my strength sessions, like how much weight I'm doing. And all I do is take a couple hours at the end of every week to look at what I did, and I ask, like, what worked, what didn't, what do I need to increase, decrease, and that's how I'm going to improve moving forward. But also understanding, like, if you're zooming out on your program, where does this program lead to in 8 weeks? Like, where am I deloading in the program? Where am I going to peak at in the program? So you're understanding it from zoomed out, but also zoomed in day to day, and you're able to make adjustments. What that allows me to do, though, is have those small wins. So when I adjust my program and I'm looking at it and it's like, okay, Thursday I have a High Rocks Metcon. Here's my time goal here. I have to finish this in this time. You almost look forward to training more.
Yeah.
You know that it's coming up, and then once you complete it, it's just a different type of feeling. You're tracking things a little more closely, avoiding injury.
Because if you are where you want to be at, it's that much more rewarding.
Yeah.
Like if you know, like you've tracked everything in the past, and you know, like this workout, like I want to beat this time.
Yeah.
Like, because that puts me on the right direction to
Yep.
do like this in my high rocks or this in my marathon.
Yep.
Like that run is so much more rewarding.
And bro, I'm telling you, this coming from someone who's been in fitness in a long time, I thought that I was pretty regimented with my workouts and whatnot. I'm telling you, if you don't write it down or track it, you're kind of just operating in free space.
And
because
I have experience with that.
I promise you are. Because if you're not, you're doing probably the same weights every week and you don't even realize it. You probably go right back to your normal flat dumbbell bench press, and you grab the 80s and you do the same thing every time. And while that's fine, like you'll get results of that, like you don't understand what doing that is leading to. Like what is the intention behind doing that workout? What's the point? Especially if like if you're trying to build businesses at the same time, like us, if we're trying to build supplement retail stores, and that's the goal right now, it's like everything you do has to be intentional. You can't just, like, if I'm going to spend an hour working out, I have to know what I'm getting out of that workout. That's going to help me with knowing where I need to go, but it's also going to help prevent injury because I know exactly when I'm doing my rehab. I know all the above. I think for you that looked a little bit different, though. It wasn't.
Well, I agree. I mean, I can relate with not tracking my work or having like a plan of workouts with my first training plan for my first 100, but I can relate with not tracking like my progress, not tracking like my paces on my runs, like how I felt, like all the different things about my runs. And that's when I told somebody else the other day that like in my first training plan for my first 100, I didn't progress at all. I ran all zone 2. I told you that in the other podcast. I ran all zone 2 the whole time. I went out like you're saying, you basically using the 80-pound dumbbells like every single time. I was running like a 9:15 pace every single time I ran for the whole summer, and I never got faster until I got with this other coach, which, I mean, this wasn't the first coach's fault. I just didn't do the speed work or track my runs. This other coach told me to track my runs. Like he told me to write down like notes, like how I feel, my paces, my heart rate, but it's already all on there because he has an app for it, so it's a little bit cooler. And now that I've seen all that and like I actually follow the speed workouts, I've gotten faster, which makes sense. Like you do make progress a little bit if you're going in there and doing the same thing, but you really don't start making the progress that you want to until you actually start tracking. And
it's the same thing with the stores.
Yeah. And for me, that was having a coach. Because my coach can look at my paces and adjust my paces based off where my heart rate was, how I feel. He can adjust my miles based off how I feel, that type of thing. But
100%. I think it's like the old time saying of like what you track is what you're going to improve. That's how it goes. And if you're not, for me, I realized if I'm not prioritizing like rehab, if I'm not prioritizing exercises that actually help with running, like knees over toes, if I'm not prioritizing my ankle and foot strength, then that's where I'm going to find myself. And that's just the way it is. And the main thing that I hope that anyone were to get out of that and us sharing those stories is that if you are one of those people, and I mean this so genuinely, I really do. If you are one of those people that is going through a spot where maybe you are a little confused, maybe you're dealing with a setback, maybe it's really tough to see the bigger vision, I would encourage you to like first find gratitude in something that you are thankful of, because there probably is one person out there that loves you, cares about you, or maybe you have a church that you enjoy going to, maybe you have a grandma that you get dinner with once. Like there is something you can find gratitude in, so find that first. Okay, now you have something to be thankful for, something to wake up for every single day. Second, find a way to track the things that you are doing, and that it may be in fitness, it may not. But if you can zoom out and you can track it and you can make time every single week to sit down at the end of the week. And for Drew, that was hiring a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, the person listening, that may be hiring I don't even know, any person
Whatever
that helps
maybe.
you track anything.
There's a lot of coaches nowadays, so
Well,
you can find a coach.
You got to be careful on coaches.
You do have to be careful.
You got to be very careful
Yeah.
on coaches there. People may be coaching, but they've never actually
done anything. Yeah.
But if you can help someone, if you can find someone to help you track the progress, or if you can learn a way to track it yourself, I think that you will find the way that you're spending your time, or you'll find different ways to do things that lead to more intention in your daily life. And I think give more purpose in the long run and help those setbacks feel a little less painful, truthfully.
I think another one that you can relate that's a little bit easier for like the general public to understand is like eating. A lot of people get frustrated whenever they don't see results with like losing weight or gaining muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And what it comes down to most of the time is that whenever you actually start tracking your calories and your macros, you realize that you're not eating enough.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's not eating enough, whether you're trying to lose weight or gain weight.
Yeah.
That's usually what I see in the store specifically, is under eating.
Yeah.
Most of the time. But just something like that. I mean, until you track your calories and your macros, you wouldn't realize that you're not eating enough protein.
Yeah.
And you're not getting in enough calories.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like that kind of relates with training.
It does. And that's why I think that if you were to listen to this and you're like, oh, we're talking about setbacks, but somehow you end on tracking, I think it's because it's legitimately, it's tactical advice, and it does make a world of a difference. It really does, bro. Like if you think about you for ultra running, the moment you hired a coach, it did make a world of a difference. The moment you hired a coach that you enjoyed the programming and it made sense for you, and you're like calling me and you're saying, I'm doing these speed workouts and I'm legitimately getting faster and it's making a world of difference in my training. You had someone that was tracking it and actually understanding the progress and adjusting it as you go.
Yeah.
I think that's the importance.
It's also not saying go get a coach either.
No,
because obviously for you, that wasn't like, go like hire somebody.
It was creating time. I think it's just what inputs am I placing in my week, and what is that providing me? Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And adjust as I go. And it has given me a completely different purpose in my training, truthfully. I think it'll just it'll make things a world of a difference from here on out. I'm legitimately thankful for the injury that I got at this point. But that's all I got on it.
Me too.
If you guys made time to listen this week, we appreciate you as always. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can hit us up on Instagram. We always respond to DMs in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I love doing this every week. I really do.
Me too.
I know sometimes it can be hard to carve time out, especially because Drew drives 3 hours here, 3 hours back home. So we can do the podcast every single week and sit down together. But I truly think that if you can set aside time to document your progress, to talk about the things you're going through in your life, and give a platform for people to relate with, I think it makes a world of a difference. And we're going to continue to keep putting.
Now that you say that too, even in life, like you talk about that, like we're tracking our progress right now too, like in life.
Yeah, on the pod.
In life, like that applies to everything, like not just training, not just like running, nutrition. Like
100%.
You need to, like, I know a lot of people, some people journal. Like you don't have to start a podcast to like track your progress in your life. No. But for us, that's kind of what it is. It's like we sit down and we talk about experiences. We talk about things we've learned. We talk about all this different stuff. So like at any time we can go back and look at a certain podcast and like see what our mindset was like in that time, like what we were thinking about, how everything was. And it's just something to reflect on and see where the progress is going.
100%.
So I think you can apply that too. Just made me think of that whenever you said that.
Yeah. And I mean, if someone else can get something out of that, then I think it does its job and it serves its purpose. So, yeah, that's it. That's episode 6. That's how we
podcast number 6.
That's how we deal with setbacks, and that is some tactical advice that we have learned that will help you get through them. So,
Yeah,
we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, we'll have another one next Sunday
For episode 7.
Yeah,
That's a wrap.
Yeah, bang.